Another balmy 12-degree day. Anyway, here's our pattern to this point. Now we've separated it. I've got it filled pretty well. Now I've got probably one final coat of sanding to do to get this filler down, because I've just I built it up way big here for draft, and on the insides, a few little voids I had. So anyway, this is getting awful close. I'll sand this out one more time, and then we'll probably go ahead and mount it on the match plate. And I thought you might be interested in match plates. So this is one of my match plate blanks here, and I cut these a sheet at a time. Basically, I take a full sheet and cut them down, and I'm down to where I've only got 2 or 3 left. So anyway, I'm gonna have to go back. Now what I do is I set these up for most of the flasks that I've got will fit in this one, in this size range. And this is, I don't even remember how big these are. This is the last flask that I built. Outside dimensions on these are about just over 13 by 11. Internal dimensions are about 11 1/4 by 9, or about 9. And like I say, this is a smaller flask, the last smaller flask that I built. Pin to pin distance on them is about 15 1/4, it looks like. And I don't get too concerned. It's just wherever my hardware matches up to fit there. So this is the drag for the bottom. And the way I set these plates up, or the way I initially cut them, is I cut them without these holes in them. I just cut the outside contour. I've just cut the outside contour. I've made a pattern for them, and this fits all of the flasks in that range, and plus it's pretty uniform for me to set them up. So these are the standard ones, and I do some oddball stuff, but this is for the most part what I keep in stock. I do a cutout here for the match plate vibrators, and I thought you might just like seeing them set up. So I've got this one, I've already marked this one out for, I set it on where it goes, mark where I'm going to drill these holes, because there's a little variation for flasks, and this is numbered number 5 flask, so that's why it's marked number 5 here, so that I know where they go. And you know, I don't know how many I've got made up of different match plates so far. There's probably, well, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. There's about 10 of them hanging on the wall over there. I've got a bunch more hanging in the back, and I probably have got about 25 or 30 match plates made up for different things. So anyway, I went ahead, and once I figured out what was going on here, I laid this plate out earlier for the match plate vibrator, and I drill these when I set up the actual plate, because there's a little variation in the match plate vibrators. It doesn't, you know, there's nothing rocket science about them. So I build them, drill them in the center for where they're supposed to go, and there is a little variation. The only thing I have to make sure of is that all the protrusions on them clear the flasks, and then I try and fit them in fairly tightly into the cutout. So anyway, let me bring you down here. We'll show you the setup of them. Not rocket science. Okay, so here's the plate. I just set it on top, get it roughly aligned. Now I do go ahead and draw center line on these when I initially make them up, and that way I know where I'm going to drill my holes. So I can just align them, mark where the pins are, and then set them up. So this is one of my sets of flask hardware here. And they will go on just like that. Let me grab the cope just to make sure that I've got it situated right, because the cope's going to matter, going to make the difference of where it lines up. I know there's clearance for the flask hardware in behind, but I want to make sure I've got clearance for the match plate vibrator there. Wouldn't be the end of the world, but there's no sense in me having to go back and rework things. Yep, we're clear there. So we can get the cope back out of the way and install our pins, or our guide plates. And what we do is we'll just drill the first one. And I just try and make sure they're pretty parallel. You know, they're again not rocket science, but if we can make them relatively parallel across there, it looks a little bit nicer. And a little bit of play there. Those pins are actually, or those guide plates are actually set up for a little bit larger pin. There we go. Well, that's that much of it set up. Now that we've got it aligned there, we can go ahead and put our match plate vibrator on. Now I may disassemble this later when I start putting finish on. I will leave the guide pins on there, that won't change, but I could take this match plate vibrator off. And I could leave it off for now, but we know this vibrator is good because I've already checked it. There's that. We'll finish sanding this out. And what I'm probably going to do with this is we're probably going to mount it in there something like that. Doesn't make a whole lot of difference really. We can do whatever. But we'll probably mount it in something like this. I'm going to put a couple little risers in here, and I won't rise them all the way, but I'll put a couple little blocks, shrink blocks in there, and connect them so hopefully any shrinkage will suck back in and we won't lose out there. And then we'll probably feed it off of this end right into the top boss. So that's probably the plan. You know, we could do that. I could bring it up a little bit more and bring a couple of runners back out here and bring them together and bring it into a riser right there. Actually, we'll turn it this way. The reason being, this is the way I handle the flask, just like this. We pour on this end. I'd prefer to pour up here in this area someplace closer to where I'm working and then have a riser here. Just more convenient for me, to being right-handed, to pour in that way. I can watch when the riser fills, where if I pour it in on this side I have to lean over and look to see what's happening on this side. So we'll probably set it in there just about like that. that. Something in that area where we're feeding off of this side. So anyway, I'm going to go ahead, I'll put these two halves back together again. And I've just got temporary pins in here to hold alignment so I can watch my draft and make sure I don't really sand beyond on one side or the other. And we'll go ahead and get this sanded out. And these pins are long enough I can use them as alignment pins when we drill it. So we'll come back once we get this sanded out and ready to go. Here we are. We're going to put this down on the match plate now. I've already drawn it out or outlined it where I want to put it on there. But that's what we look like so far. And we'll go ahead, we'll super glue one side down, let it dry, then I'll go ahead, take it over to the mill, and I'll drill the mounting holes, and then we'll run the pins through and put the other half on the bottom side. And then it's just a matter of adding our sprues, risers, and runners, and then getting finish on. We'll sand between coats and finish, and I've got a little more filling to do where I put the pins through, but other than that, why, everything should go pretty smoothly. And that's the way that will sit on there. Now there's Loyalty as he waits to go inside. Okay, so we're just going to let this set for a few minutes. I'll go ahead and weight it down so it stays there, and then we'll go ahead and drill it, get the pins in, and get the other half on. Alright, finishing up another day out here. So, I got the match plate to the point where we're just now doing finishing work on it, basically. The pattern's adhered on both sides. I've doweled it. I've cut the dowels off that protruded, and once it dries, then I'll go back, add some more filler, add filler for fillets around there, and a few little places that I need to touch up on both sides. Add runners, risers, and sprue, and then finish the whole thing. And I normally put several coats of finish on the plate. Usually I'll use shellac. It doesn't, just something to seal it, to help preserve it. You know, the stuff that I do doesn't see everyday use. I'm not producing hundreds of patterns or hundreds of castings out of them. You know, so for my little short run that I do, or the life of these, why, if I get a couple of coats of shellac on it, why, that will last. Sometimes I will make adjustments to the patterns and things by building up shellac, by sanding off shellac and refinishing any number of things, but anyway, it's easy to maintain and take care of. So flask wise, I've got, this is the last flask that I built. I've got a bunch of wood back there. I've got to build some more flasks, but anyway, my flasks are all numbered. 5, this one's 5B, the cope is 5A, and I number them all A, or whatever the number is, and then A and B, because they are their own, you know, they're not really interchangeable with these, with the wood and making them over different periods of time, why there's going to be variations in how they're machined and how the pins and stuff are set up. I've got some fairly constant things that I do with all of my molding flasks now that I'm using this style hardware on, and it is, here's the cope. So this is old foundry man style flask hardware, and I like it on these smaller flasks. It works really well. I still do use my larger flask hardware, the Steve Chastain style hardware, on bigger flasks, but on these flasks in this size range, for the most part, I use this flask. I've got several constants. So this is flask 5, which who knows how I came up with that number, but on the last run, why, this is probably the 5th one of the last couple of runs of flasks. I do an A and a B, and the reason I do that is I've got some that have got a third portion on them, and that'll be a C, so it keeps them in order. And on all of mine, on one long side, why, there's paint on it, stripe on the right hand end, and on the adjoining end there's one. That shows alignment. The way I always handle these flasks is my numbers and lettering system goes on my right hand side along with the cutouts on the flask hardware, where the other end's just got a round pinhole, where this one's got the slot cut in it. That's always my right hand side. I'm trying to go to the paint markings on the front so it's facing me, although I looked at the last batch that I did and they're actually on the back and then on the other end. So that makes sure I've got orientation. Same way with my snap, or with my follower board, or with my match plates. They've got corresponding paint on whatever end, on the two ends, so there's no chance of misalignment. They sit there, and I've got paint marks all aligned, so it only goes on one way. Same way on this end. It just saves confusion. It's easier and quicker for me to do it that way. Now I've just done a coat of spray paint on these. It's as much to fill it as anything else, and since I'm going in for the day, why it can dry all night, got some runs and stuff, I'll get that sanded out, and then we'll start adding filler again, and then starting putting finish on. So a lot of this will get sanded off, a lot of this paint color will go away that's on the board and everything, but once we get it pretty close, we'll add our sprues and risers and give the whole thing a sand, and we'll have a pattern. So there's the one side, there's the other side. It will mount in this orientation. Sprue will be on this end. I'll feed directly into the top boss. I'll put a runner across there and connect to both of the feet, and then we'll put one riser right in the middle, and I think that'll be enough. May have to vent it a little bit in those. I don't know exactly what I'll do there. If I have to, I'll probably cast them and see how they work. But anyway, that's the way I develop a match plate. This is it for the day. I will get this set out of the way and go in for the day where it's warm. So anyway, hopefully you find this a little bit interesting. Comments, suggestions, leave them in the comment section for me below. If you haven't hit that subscribe button, I'd appreciate it. Help keep this channel growing, and hopefully I've got something that will be interesting to you as time goes on. And as always, guys, thanks for taking the time to watch.